Good morning, afternoon, or evening, cats and dogs. This is going to be the first video on the Operations on Fractions review packet. We're going to begin today with multiplying fractions, and that's going to include problems 1 through 9 from the packet. Now, this is something you should be relatively familiar with, so if you want to try the problems on your own and then go back and listen to different parts of the video to double check your solutions or make sure you're correct, that's perfectly acceptable. Especially given that you guys are advanced students, you probably don't need as much guidance with this, but I still wanted to provide a video and provide some examples on how to multiply, eventually divide fractions, and then add and subtract fractions as well, since it's something that coming into 7th grade you should be able to do, but we still have students struggling a bit with it. So the one thing you will see in this lesson that you may not have seen in years past is we're going to be multiplying fractions that include both positive and negative fractions. But the rules for integers that we had still apply for multiplying with fractions. So obviously, if you multiply two positives, you get a positive. If you multiply a positive and a negative in either order, that's these two right here, you're going to get a negative solution. And then if you multiply two negatives, you get a positive. Again, those are the rules we looked at with integers, and the same rules for fractions apply here. Or the same rules for integers apply here for fractions. It helps if it makes sense, right? Now, some rules for multiplying fractions. First off, always make sure to change mixed numbers to improper fractions first. You have to do that. I can guarantee you that if you have a multiple choice question, excuse me, on a quiz or a test, one of the answer choices will be from just multiplying straight across. So you really want to make sure that you change mixed numbers to improper fractions first, and we'll review how to do that in this video. The second thing, and I know you have two number ones there, that just auto-formatted. You are going to cross reduce if possible. And I'm going to show you how to do that. You probably learned how to do it in the past. Maybe you didn't because the numbers are relatively small, but I can tell you here, for some of our examples, if you don't cross reduce, you're going to get some really big multiplication to do. So I do suggest you cross reduce if possible. Once you've done that, you can multiply straight across. And don't forget to simplify your final answer if needed. I did give 3 guided examples here, including one without any mixed numbers, and then 2 questions with mixed numbers. So you can certainly take a look at those. As one of your assignments in the next several days, you will be completing an additional practice sheet on both multiplying and dividing fractions. That way you'll get a chance to try some of this stuff independently. So let's begin at the bottom of the page with our first 2 examples. Number 1, we have 2/3 times negative 3/4. Now, you could get away in this problem without cross-reducing. You could simply take 2 times 3 to get 6, 3 times 4 to get 12. 6/12, of course, is going to reduce to 1/2. It would be negative here, though, because you've got a positive times a negative. But I'm going to talk about how to cross-reduce. So what I recognize is I look at my diagonal terms, in this case 2 and 4, and I'm going to highlight those in yellow for us. Let's see if I can get the thinner pen. So these guys, 2 and 4 both divide by 2. So I took 2 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 2. And I like to physically write that out, but I'll show you a little bit of a shortcut that you can use if you feel comfortable. And then I look at my other pair of diagonal numbers and see if there's anything they both divide by. I'll highlight those in green. Excuse me, both 3 and 3 divide by 3, so you can see I wrote that here. So my yellow cross-reducing is these guys. My green cross-reducing is going to be these guys. And then what I do is I just rewrite the fractions. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1, 3 divided by 3 up here is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then I multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, and I have a negative sign in front. Again, I recognize that if you take 2 times 3 and 3 times 4, those products are pretty easy to work with. And that being said, all the numbers will not always be super small like that, kind of like in number 2, so cross-reducing helps. I do just want to mention, you did the same thing, or you would have done the same thing like 10, 15 years ago to cross-reduce, but there is a little bit of a shortcut here. Like if I know 2 and 4 both divide by 2, I can physically cross out this 2 and this 4, and just put like 2 divided by 2 is 1, and sneak a little 1 next to this guy here, and sneak a little 2 next to this guy here. And then I can cross out my 2 3s, 3 divided by 3, and this is where the cross reduce comes from. each of those becomes a 1, and then just multiply straight across. So you've got 1 times 1, 1 times 2 to get a half. If you don't want to physically write all of this out, you can just cross these off and put, they should be a little smaller than this, but put the quotients right next to each of these numbers. Or you can rewrite it. I always teach it this way, especially to students who are just beginning to work with this, and anyone who's maybe struggled with multiplying or dividing fractions in the past. But either way works. Again, when I was back in school, we didn't actually physically write out 2 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 2 like I did here. We would just cross them out and say, okay, I know 2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and just put those numbers next to it. And if you're okay with that, that's fine too. I'll show you that on a couple of problems just so you can see some practice using that method as well. Number 2, we have negative 5/12 times negative 6/25. So I am going to cross reduce here because I recognize that both 5 and 25 divide by 5, and both 6 and 12 divide by 6. You want to divide by the largest number possible to try to reduce it as much as possible. So you can see here I did 5 divided by 5, 25 divided by 5, 6 divided by 6, and 12 divided by 6. So that's going to get us 1 on the top of my fraction on the left, 2 on the bottom. Fraction on the right will become 1 over 5. A negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 5 is 10. And I didn't write the solution up in the line here or on the line. You probably should, but I did make sure to circle it at the end so you can see that solution. Again, if you have to multiply straight across, that can be a little tricky because you'll end up with, I believe, 30 over 300, which reduces to 1/10 as well. You have to know what 12 times 25 is, though, and that's not quite as easy. If, let's say, you only cross reduce maybe the 6 and the 12, that's okay too. You just might have to reduce a bit at the end. We try to prevent having to do that at the end. If we do it in the beginning, we have smaller numbers to work with, so it makes it a little easier. All right, number 3, we have 4/33 times negative 11/12. I know that 4 and 12 both divide by 4, and I know 11 and 3 both, or 11 and 33 both divide by 11. Sometimes I have students who will tell me, oh, they divide by 3. Well, 33 does, but 11 does not. You're thinking of the quotient, so be careful there. That's the other reason why I like to physically write out those quotients so I don't make mistakes like that. So 4 divided by 4 and 12 divided by 4. I've got 11 divided by 11 and 33 divided by 11. So the fraction on the left becomes 1/3. The fraction on the right also becomes 1/3. And a positive times a negative is a negative. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 3 is 9. And we're done. We get a solution of negative 1/9. This one especially, if you don't cross reduce, you've got to take 4 times 11, which is pretty easy, but 33 times 12 isn't. Again, I have some students in years past that are like, well, I don't need to know how to cross reduce. Yeah, you do, because you may end up having some really big numbers on problems on quizzes and tests, and I'll have those same students who'll be spending 20 or 30 extra minutes trying to calculate and recalculate and multiply things. It's best if you can cross reduce because it's going to make your life at the end a lot easier than if you have really big numbers throughout and then have to reduce at the end. All right, so number 4, we've got negative 27 times negative 2/3. So for this question, I did rewrite negative 27 as negative 27 over 1. So I just put a 1 in the denominator, 27 in the numerator. And I did recognize that I could reduce the 27 and 3. They both divide by 3. So you can see that I did that right here. So the fraction on the left becomes negative 9 over 1. The fraction on the right becomes negative 2 over 1. Multiply straight across to get positive 18. Again, if you don't like having to physically write those quotients, just going back to number 3 for a second, you could cross off the 4 and you could cross off the 12. And you could say, okay, I know that 4 divides by 4 and gets me 1. 12 divides by 4 and gets me 3. I could cross off my 11 and my 33 and say, well, 11 divided by 11 is going to get me 1. 33 divided by 11 is going to get me 3. And then just multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 3 is 9. And a positive times a negative is a negative. So just be careful with that. Cross reducing is going to make life a lot simpler for you, I do suggest showing it the way I have it here, but if you feel really confident and you want to do this shortcut, that's fine too. All right, now let's mix in some mixed numbers. So in number 5, I have negative 4 and 7/8 times negative 7 and 1/3. So a quick reminder, negative 4 and 7/8, if I want to change that to an improper fraction where the top is bigger than the bottom, I'm going to take 8 times 4, which is 32, the denominator times the whole number, and then I'm going to add 32 and 7, which is my numerator. So that will be 39 over 8, keep the denominator the same. And then for 7 and 1/3, I'm going to multiply 3 by 7 to get 21, plus 1 is 22. Ignore the negative when I do that. Like I've seen students say, oh, 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. Negative 21 plus 1 is negative 20. Ignore that negative. You just do 7 and 1/3, which is 22/3, and tack that negative on the front. Now, we definitely want to cross reduce here as well. There's not a lot of cross reducing to do, but if we look at our diagonal terms, we've got 39 and 3, which both divide by 3, and 22 and 8 both divide by 2. They don't divide by 8. Obviously, 8 divides by 8, but 8 doesn't go evenly into 22, but I can still divide them both by 2, so I can reduce something. So let's go ahead and do that. So 39 divided by 3, 8 divided by 2, 22 divided by 2, and 3 divided by 3. So 39 divided by 3 is 13, 8 divided by 2 is 4, 22 divided by 2 is 11, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now I've got to multiply straight across here. 13 times 11 is not super easy. I know it begins in a 1, ends in a 3 for the 13, and then 1 plus 3 is 4 to get that middle digit. So that's 143 over 4, and a negative times a negative is a positive. But now we should change it back into a mixed number because most things in real life are going to be shown or represented as mixed numbers. So I did do some long division off to the side. So I'm going to delete this box here. I did 143, the numerator, divided by 4, the denominator. 4 goes into 14 3 times without going over. I did put a 0 here since 4 does not go into 1. 4 times 3 is 12. 14 minus 12 is 2. Bring down the 3. 4 goes into 23 5 times to get you 20, and then 23 minus 20 gets you a remainder of 3. So we do get a remainder here, which is part of our final solution. In fact, our final solution is going to be 35 and 3/4. So we take these two guys, so 35 and 3/4, and it was positive, so that will be my final solution. We'll also talk about how to plug these into your calculator as well, just to give you a chance to see how to plug these in at some point to double check your solutions. All right, we've got a few more. Number 6, negative 3 and 3/8 times 2 and 1/3. 3 and 3/8 as an improper fraction is 27/8, and 2 and 1/3 is 7/3. And again, if you're having any trouble with these, I'm going through this assuming that you have some background knowledge on this. Feel free to ask. We'll spend some time in class also reviewing these things, but I want to spend our class time focusing on the things that might be a little more new for you. Let's cross reduce. 8 and 7 do not reduce, but 27 and 3 do. They both divide by 3. So you're going to see that I did that work here. 27 divided by 3 and 3 divided by 3. 27 divided by 3 is 9. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then I just multiply straight across. So 9 times 7 is 63. 8 times 1 is 8. Don't forget the negative sign. It's really easy to forget that. 8 goes into 63 7 times. 8 times 7 is 56. And then you have a remainder of 7. So you can do long division like I did over here, but I was able to figure that out mentally. I knew that 8 times 8 was 64, so I knew that it had to go in only 7 times, and you'd be left with the maximum remainder, which was 7. So it'll be negative 7 and 7/8. But again, if you're not comfortable with doing it mentally, then just do 63 divided by 8 off to the side. You'll get 7 with a remainder of 7. So it'll be 7 and 7/8. All right, we've got 3 more for this video, because we do have one where we're multiplying 3 numbers. So negative 1 and 5/6 and times 4 and 1/8. Let's write those as improper fractions first. Negative 1 and 5/6 will be negative 11/6, and 4 and 1/8 will be 33/8. So we've got a little bit of cross reducing we can do. 11 and 8 do not reduce, but 6 and 33 do both divide by 3. So you can see that I showed that here. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 33 divided by 3 is 11. Multiply straight across. 11 times 11 is 121. 2 times 8 is 16. You can do long division, but basically what I did was I just did some mental math or even off to the side, try to figure out how many times 16 goes into 121. I started with 16 times 5 because I know that 16 times 5 is 80. And then I knew 16 times 6 would be 96. I just added 16 onto 80. And then I added 16 on again. So 96, 106, we have to add another 6 on that, will get us 112. And I knew that if I added 16 on, it would be more than 121. So I recognized that this would be 7 times, and 16 times 7 again is 112. That leaves me with a remainder of 9. So I got negative 7 and 9/16. Some of the calculations are still going to be a little tricky. They're not going to be super easy to work with, but try your best. And again, if you need to show work off to the side, if you're not sure how many times 16 goes into 121, do some work. Do 16 times 5 off to the side. Say, oh, that's 80, it's too small. So let me try 16 times 6. Let me try 16 times 7. Let me try 16 times 8. Make sure it doesn't go over 121, and it will. The calculations might still be difficult, and you may need to show work off to the side. Okay, there's no harm in that. Number 8, we have 4 and 4/5 times negative 7 and 2/9. 4 and 4/5 is an improper fraction, is 24/5. Negative 2 and 7/9 is negative 25/9. We definitely want to cross reduce here because again, trying to multiply 24 by 25 and then reduce at the end, it's a lot. So what I recognize is that 24 and 9 do reduce. They both divide by 3. 5 and 25 both divide by 5, so they reduce. And you can see my work down here, 24 divided by 3, 9 divided by 3, 25 divided by 5, and 5 divided by 5. So that's going to get us 8 over 1 times negative 5 over 3. 8 times 5 is 40. 1 times 3 is 3. It's negative here. I know that 3 goes into 40 13 times to get us 39. That leaves a remainder of 1. So we get negative 13 and 1/3. All right, now you might have to multiply 3 or more fractions. I don't think you have any of those on your test. I could be wrong. But let's take a look at this one. So I did need to rewrite 1 and 5/6 as an improper fraction. That will be 11/6. And then I have multiple places to cross reduce. So we're going to have all sorts of stuff here. So I've got the 5 and the 10 that both divide by 5. I recognize that the 3 and the 6 both divide by 3. And I also recognize that the 11 and 11 both divide by 11. So let's take a look at that. Oh goodness. So let's start with the yellow. I divided 5 by 5 and 10 by 5. And then for the green, 3 by 3 and 6 divided by 3. And then the two 11s, I both divided by 11. And man, that makes life a whole lot easier. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 11 divided by 11 is 1. 11 divided by 11 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. Multiply straight across. 1 by 2 by 1 is 2. 1 by 1 by 2 is also 2. And if we have a negative 2 over 2, that's equivalent to negative 1. So you see a lot of examples here. And again, in the next couple of days, you're going to get a chance to try some of these independently as well. That way you get a chance to really test your skills with some of this stuff. Feel free to also ask questions if you have them. While I expect that you have a pretty good idea already of how to multiply fractions, I've thrown a couple of new things your way, the negatives and also some bigger numbers, because I feel like a lot of times in elementary school, you're working with relatively small numbers that you don't have to cross reduce. So you become pretty reluctant to do that. It's going to be really helpful here if you can cross reduce. It's going to make your life at the end much easier. And if at any point you're struggling, try some questions, show them to me. I'm more than happy to take a look at it. Send me a picture of them. If you're saying, I can't get the right solution, what am I doing wrong? I'm here to help. Thanks for listening. The next video is going to cover dividing fractions and a little bit of adding and subtracting. So you'll see this stuff again and we'll reinforce this information a second time. Again, thanks for listening.